I begin in the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. I send salutations on all the messengers, especially the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Have you ever thought about those non-Muslims that live within and amongst you? The non-Muslims that are your neighbors, the non-Muslim colleagues you work with, the non-Muslims that you interact with maybe on a daily basis. Have you ever thought about their hereafter? On the Day of Judgment, they will also be made to stand in front of Allah the Almighty. Just like you and I will be made to stand in front of Allah the Almighty, and we will be questioned, we will be accountable for our actions. Likewise, these non-Muslims will also be accountable for their actions, and they will stand in front of Allah. If they, despite being given the message of Islam, never accepted it in this world, then they will be led to Jahannam, and they will end up in Jahannam. We know our purpose of life. Our purpose of life and our purpose of being created is to worship Allah the Almighty. For this, we have clear instructions, there's clear guidance for us in the form of the Quran, in the form of the Sunnah from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we live as Muslims within these boundaries because we know that our success lies in the Quran and the Sunnah. Because this is the guidance for us that will lead to our success in this world and the hereafter. Now, every human needs some form of guidance and some form of instructions. Whenever we buy something, for example, we buy a cupboard that needs to be assembled, then there's normally a manual with it. And we use the manual to help us to build the cupboard if we are not an expert in building or assembling the cupboard. So we need a manual, we need instructions, we need guidance. Every nation that came before us, they were sent guidance in the form of prophets. Every nation had a prophet, and the prophet of each nation gave their nation clear guidance through instructions from Allah the Almighty. Likewise, we are from the nation of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and our prophet is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is the last of prophets. No prophets will come after him. There will be many individuals claiming to be prophet and have come as well and claim to be prophet, but they are liars and they are from amongst the Dajjals. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam also, he gave us guidance. So he was our guide, and he was the prophet, and he is the prophet of our nation. So each nation was given guidance through prophets. But because Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the last of prophets, and his nation, whom we are part of, is the last of nations, there are no prophets to come after. So now the question arises, whose responsibility is it to give guidance to those individuals that have not embraced the message of Islam, that do not know what the Quran is, that do not know what the Sunnah is, do not know who Allah is, do not know who the Prophet ﷺ is? Whose responsibility is it? In previous nations, it was the responsibility of each prophet. But now there's no prophet to come, so whose responsibility is it? Allah the Almighty answers the answer to this in the Quran. He says, وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Let there be from amongst you a nation, people that guide and call towards that which is good. And what is good? Islam. That enjoin the good and forbid the evil. So Allah is saying that it is our responsibility. It is our responsibility to enjoin the good, forbid the evil, call each other towards Islam. So to call the non-Muslims towards Islam, it is our responsibility. And Allah doesn't just leave it up to there. He says that these are successful. These are the successful people. Those that give da'wah, those that call others towards Islam, those that enjoin the good and forbid the evil, these are the successful people. Allah mentions in another place in the Quran, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. That you are the best nation ever raised. You are the best nation ever raised. Why? For the humanity. Raised for the humanity. Why? Because you enjoin good and you forbid evil. So Allah is saying that we are the best of nations. We are the best of people. Our nation, we are the best. Why? Because we enjoin good and forbid the evil. Meaning, if we call towards Islam, we call towards good, we prohibit the evil, we forbid from doing wrong, then we are the best of people. So Allah in this verse also is telling us the importance of da'wah, the importance of calling towards Allah. Allah mentions in another place in the Quran, ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. That call towards the way of your Lord. Call towards the way of your Lord with wisdom. So when you do give da'wah with wisdom. And also he mentions with good counsel. So make sure you give kind advice. And when you debate with others, when you dialogue with others, when you have a discussion with others, when you're calling towards Islam, calling towards Allah and the Prophet, then don't just do it anyhow. Rather, do it with the best of manners. Do it with the best of manners. This is what Allah is telling us. And it comes in another place in the Quran. Allah the Almighty mentions, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. That Allah does not change the condition of people until they change themselves, until they bring change within themselves. So if we want Allah to be happy with us, we want Allah to make everything go our way, then we need to bring change within ourselves by acting upon His commands, staying away from His prohibitions, but at the same time giving da'wah, calling others towards Islam, enjoining good and forbidding evil, and then Allah the Almighty will positively affect our ummah and it will bring a positive vibe amongst us. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentions الدال على الخير كأجر فاعله, that the one who calls towards good, he gets the same reward as the doer of that good. So if we call others towards Islam and someone embraces Islam because of us, and then they start being punctual with their 5-time daily prayers, they fast in the month of Ramadan, they recite the Quran, they do all different type of virtuous acts, then whatever reward they get, we will also get the same. And if they have children and they grow up to be believers, then we will get reward for that as well. And if Islam carries on within that progeny for generations, then we will be getting reward for generations. We will be getting reward for generations. So this is how virtuous giving da'wah is, and calling towards good and calling towards Islam, enjoining the good and forbidding the evil is. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentions, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. That none of you can be a complete believer until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. The scholars mention here that none of you can be a complete believer until he loves for his brother in humanity what he loves for himself. So not just a brother in Islam, but a brother in humanity. So even a non-Muslim, you know that he's a non-Muslim. You know that if he dies in the state, he will end up in Jahannam. So you need to have that fervor within you that you want him to embrace Islam. So you give him da'wah. You give him da'wah because you know you are a Muslim. You know Allah has blessed you with the best of gifts, Iman. So you also want him to have the best of gifts, Iman as well. So he ends up in paradise, he ends up in Jannah, and he ends up from amongst the successful ones. So this is also an indication, this narration, to the importance of da'wah. And da'wah, in essence, it makes our Iman complete. If we involve ourselves in da'wah, we understand the importance, then it's from amongst the signs of a complete believer. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions that لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى أكون أحب إليه من والده وولده والناس أجمعين. That none of you can be a complete believer until I am more beloved to him than his father, his children, and the whole of mankind, all humans. So we cannot be a complete believer until the Prophet ﷺ is more beloved to us. He's the most beloved to us after Allah. And when we claim to love the Prophet ﷺ, and when we claim to love anyone, just claiming it from our tongues is not sufficient. We have to show it from our actions as well, where we do things according to his teachings, who we love. So we love the Prophet ﷺ. He encourages us to do da'wah, so we also give da'wah. Because the Prophet ﷺ himself, he mentions, and Allah the Almighty tells him to say this in the Quran. He says, قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ أَنَا وَمَنِ اتَّبَعَنِي. Say, O Prophet of Allah, Allah is saying to the Prophet ﷺ, say to the people, this is my way. This is my way. Which way? I call towards Allah. I call towards Allah. So the Prophet ﷺ saying, my way is giving da'wah towards Allah with insight. Me and those that follow me. So this is my way. The Prophet ﷺ is saying, my way is to give da'wah and call others towards Islam. So if we really love the Prophet ﷺ, then we need to keep this in mind, and we need to understand the importance of da'wah. The Prophet ﷺ mentions in another place, بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً, that convey from me even one verse. So spread even one verse from me. We can understand from these Quranic verses and these prophetic narrations the importance of da'wah. It is an obligation upon us that we need to make sure we enlighten others in relation to Islam, call others towards Islam, tell them the true peaceful message of Islam, the pristine teachings of Islam. Not that we just go on our daily lives without inviting others towards Islam. I pray Allah the Almighty give us the ability to understand the importance of da'wah, how virtuous it is. I pray Allah the Almighty give us the ability to involve ourselves in da'wah related activities. And I pray Allah the Almighty give us the ability to act upon everything that has been said.